now has learned how to use Zoom, and everybody's trapped at home. And so
Exactly.
for me, it's just, I'm having a field day, right?
Yeah.
It's open season on great guests. And so I think I've done 3 guests on my channel this week,
Oh,
because there's just so many good people to be able to talk to. And I've got a guest. So I've got a guest tomorrow morning. He's in Europe. Pekka Juhanen, he's the developer of the electric sail, which is a
oh, yeah.
concept that NASA has been considering as part of its NIAC awards.
Interesting.
And it works purely, it allows spacecraft like a solar sail, but instead of using a solar sail, it uses the solar wind as a propulsion system. And it sort of uses electricity to repel the ions, the charged
very
ions
cool.
that are coming from the sun. Really cool idea. Anyway, so we're gonna be talking about that tomorrow, and then I've got Dr. Ryan Watkins on Monday, and she's going to be talking about she's on the advisory board for Blue Origin, the Blue Moon system, and is sort of a renowned planetary scientist, and so and focusing on the moon, one of the people searching for water deposits and stuff on the moon. So going to be talking to her with all my moon exploration questions, and that'll be on Monday. So yeah, it's been great. We had Scott Manley on Monday, and then I also had Brian Keating was back earlier this week. So yeah, no, I'm for me, this has worked out very well. I'm making
By
the
the
best. I'm making apocalypse lemonade.
by the way, my daughter works in the communication department of Los Alamos Labs, and so she interviews a lot of scientists associated with work the lab does. And there's a woman that's one of the Martian experts. I imagine if you wanted, I could work with my daughter to see if they wanted to get on this with you.
Sure, you talk to Nancy. Let Nancy know. I'm sure Nancy's listening, and she will be on that in a heartbeat.
Okay,
She
I'll put a link. I'll send my daughter a link,
That'd
and
be great.
she can
Yeah.
solicit anybody that wants to maybe jump on.
All right, I'm going to say hi to a bunch of people that are watching. Hello to Andrew Planet, Andy Cowley, Ben Kalo, Bob Moeller, Charles Yakale, David Dunn, David Fairweather, Eric Schneider, Gordon Dewis, Horizon Brave, Ian Farquharon, James Dubbin, John Musk, Johnny J, Kevin Ayers, K Spence 303, Nancy Graziano, Ocean McIntyre, Paranor, Paul Graz, Psychocat 749, Rich Wilson, Arjone Sergusi, Susan Hunter, Susie Murph, Tesla Ranger, Wayne Francis. Hello, everybody. Welcome. And everybody on Twitch. And I apologize, I don't see your names. So I just see the YouTube.
Andrew Planet, you mentioned there. I've met him in Gibraltar before. He's a pretty cool dude.
Yeah. He's been a fan for a long time.
Yep.
I don't even know what the situation is Spain, I guess.
They're on hard. They're on hard lockdown. Their lockdown there means we've got friends there. Their lockdown means you can't leave your apartment, period.
Yeah. No, it's pretty rough.
Our lockdown is lockdown light, really.
So's ours. Yeah, ours is like come on, Canada, let's pull together and do this right. As opposed
to ours is until June here in Virginia. It's till June 10th, so that's over 2 months.
We have no date.
Yeah,
we have no expected time that this is going to end. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're just going to get cracking on the actual episode. Beth may show up just at the drop of a hat. We will find out if that happens. So don't be surprised if I introduce Beth later on. But until then, let's get on with the show. All right. Get my introduction. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the Weekly Space Hangout for Wednesday, April 8th, 2020. I'm Fraser Kane, publisher of Universe Today. This week, we're going to be talking about BepiColombo's Earth flyby, bizarre orbits for exoplanets, major takeaways from the Mining Space Summit, and we'll probably get to a bunch of other space news as well that is running across our news feeds. Joining me this week, on my screen right now, I've got Dave Dickinson. David.
Hey, here in Norfolk, week 4 of growing my pandemic ponytail. So.
Yeah, we were talking about that. If this keeps going, everyone's going to be sporting some version of this.
I went into this over a month ago needing a haircut, so yes. I don't know. In 3 or 4 months, it might get scary.
Yeah, you really timed it badly. All right, from Germany, we've got Nika Klimovic. Nika, welcome back.
Hello, space enthusiast. Happy to be here again.
And as always, just like mad respect from the bottom of my heart that you are up at 2 a.m. German time here, ready to bring us the news. So yes. Thank you. All right, and like I said, we may have another co-host joining us in a second. If not, that's fine. We'll make it work. Now, of course, before we get into the interview portion of this episode, and I promise you're going to want to see this interview, I want to give a huge thank you to our good friends at the Weekly Space Hangout crew. These are our friends. These are our fans. Really, they are our executive producers. They are the puppet masters who just tell us what to do. They organize the guests. They figure out some of the topics they want to talk about. And we just show up and we just do our part. So if you want to take your enthusiasm for space exploration and astronomy to the next level, then you should join the Weekly Space Hangout crew. Totally free. WSHcrew.space. They will hook you up. They'll turn you into an executive producer just like everybody. And you will then have really all the authority you need to reach out to your favorite astronomers and astronauts and book them here on the Weekly Space Hangout. So, WSHcrew.space. All right, let's get into this week's special guest. We've got Space Shuttle Mission Specialist, Mike Mullane. Mike, welcome to the Weekly Space Hangout.
Hi, everybody. Pleasure. Good to join the conversation.
Oh, it's absolute pleasure to have you joining us. And for people who aren't aware of your incredible resume, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, I'm sure nobody's heard of me. I'm Mike Mullane, Richard Mike Mullane. I'm a astronaut, I'm a retired astronaut. I flew 3 times in the early shuttle program. I was in the first group of astronauts that were selected for the space shuttle in 1978. And I flew 3 shuttle missions. First flight was in 1984, which was the maiden voyage of the orbiter Discovery. Second mission was the second mission after Challenger in 1988. That was aboard Atlantis. My third and last mission was aboard Atlantis, and that was in 1990.
I would love to know, like when did you come on to NASA as an astronaut? When did you start going through that process?
Well, I started the interview process, application process in probably mid-1986 is when they announced they would be selecting astronauts for the Space Shuttle program. I was in the Air Force, and I was stationed at Edwards Air Force Base at the time, completing my backseater course in test pilot school. I wasn't a fighter pilot. I was a backseater in Phantom F4s. I was a goose. If you saw Top Gun, I was a goose in the Air Force. But
right.
I was going through the flight test engineer test pilot school course when they announced they were selecting astronauts. So I started my application process there.
You said 86, but I'm just trying to sort of do the math
86,
here.
No, 76.
76. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So like 5 years after or 4 years after the last astronauts left the surface of the moon,
right?
They were opening up applications for this next piece of hardware, the Space Shuttle.
Right. But I'm sorry for the confusion, but it was 1976 that I started my application process and was selected in 78.
And like going into it, I'm sort of, I was there for the first launch of the Space Shuttle in 1981, watched on television. I wasn't there. I was, here in Canada watching on TV. And it was, even at my age, at 10 years old, it sort of blew my mind that this was actually happening. My dad was incredibly excited. This was, he had watched the moon landings and suddenly it's all happening again. We're watching this next stage in space exploration. What was your understanding? I would love to sort of understand just how you perceive this whole process back when you were starting to go through this. What was sort of the feeling of this next stage of space exploration?
Well, first of all, I was a fan of the space race, or a child of the space race, and I was all in with the space program. So this was something I wanted to desperately do. As far as when we got there, we were told we'd probably be flying within 2 years or so, but the shuttle obviously didn't start flying for a while, 1981. And then the flight rate was very slow. So we we waited around a long time to finally get our rides into space. But it's funny, I think most of my group of astronauts, certainly the military astronauts who are familiar with high performance vehicles, when we were watching the first launch in 1981, I think we all had a sense there maybe a 50-50 chance this thing is going to work. Given the complexity of it, we just felt like there was a lot of unknowns on it. In fact, I had one of my classmates, when we listened as Columbia was headed into orbit, we hear these milestones being called on the abort windows open and closing. Your RTLS window closes. Now your abort to orbit window opens, that closes. Those various windows, and it got finally when you got up and you started thinking this is really going to work. and when we heard MECO, main engine cutoff, we all jumped up and cheered. And I'll never forget, one of my astronaut classmates hollered, "Now I can put in a swimming pool," because he was delaying doing any improvements at his house because he wasn't sure he was going to have a job until this thing actually demonstrated it could fly. I think we all were shocked that it worked as well as it did coming right out of the gate.
Yeah. And then that first flight. So when did you learn that you were going to be flying?
Well, as far as they don't select extra astronauts, everybody was there to fly, and everybody is desperate to be in line and have a slot and get into orbit. And I was selected for my first mission, which launched in '84. I was probably selected for that mission in 1982, I would imagine, probably mid 1982. I don't remember exactly, but that's when I was assigned to that mission. And then we started, this heavy training, year and a half training to get ready for it.
Your career obviously bookends the Challenger disaster. And again, one of the most memorable experiences for so many of us in this space exploration fan community. I mean, it was a momentous event that shocked us all as it happened. How did your experience change being on a mission that was right before Challenger, and then some of the first missions that came after Challenger?
Well, you're right about Challenger ripping the heart out of everybody. 4 of my astronaut classmates were killed on Challenger, including Judy Resnick. Her and I flew together on our rookie mission aboard Discovery in 1984, 17 months earlier. So it obviously was a trauma of the first magnitude for everybody. And as far as the fear factor goes, I tell people my fear factor of riding these things didn't change pre-Challenger to post-Challenger. And I don't think it did for any of the military astronauts, because we had all been in a career where planes crashed, high performance jets crashed, people died. It was a career where not many people can experience, because you're going to memorial services and consoling families when you're 23 years old. And so you really learn right early on in your Air Force career that this is a dangerous business. And I think we all felt that, this is dangerous flying this rocket. And it remained dangerous after Challenger in the minds of the military people, because it was a high performance aerospace vehicle. So my fear factor never changed.
Yeah.
And it was extreme, believe me, when you're sitting out of that launch pad. There's no question about it.
It's funny. I've never I've had a chance to interview many astronauts who flew on the space shuttles, and I've never heard one that found it fun.
That what?
That enjoyed it. That enjoyed the experience.
No, I enjoyed the experience.
The launch part. That always found the launch part quite. I think uncomfortable is often the term that's used.
The thing is in a fighter jet, you're sitting on an ejection seat, and rightly or wrongly, you have this sense that if something really goes bad, I have this final out. I can pull the ejection handle. On the shuttle, there's no ejection handle. So when you're strapped in, you're a prisoner of this machine. It must work. There's no way to bail out of this. And that makes for a very heightened sense of fear. Yeah. The anticipatory fear laying out that launch pad was extreme, much, much greater than I ever experienced in Vietnam when I was going out on a combat mission. It was extreme, frankly, for weeks coming into the mission. It's in the back of your mind. You make preparations. You say goodbye. You get your will out, make
Yep.
sure that's updated. You say goodbye to your family as if you're never going to see them again. So it definitely was a very fearful event.
Do you think, I mean, from that perspective, I mean, we're in this new golden age of space exploration. We've got everything that's happening with SpaceX, with rockets that land close to their launch pads, and the work that's being done on the Starship, which potentially could deliver this holy grail of a two-stage reusable rocket system, which would be wonderful. And then people thinking about how they're going to be going back to the moon and off to Mars. Do you think that people appreciate how risky and dangerous this is? Is that sort of hit home, or have we sort of lost that sense?
I do not believe people have that sense of risk that they would be taking flying those vehicles. I really don't think they can possibly sense it, until you've really you're an engineer, or you've had some experience in the past where you can look at redundancy and testing and escape systems. I know I would be very comfortable on a SpaceX rocket because they have a proven, the Dragon capsule, because they have a proven escape system.
Yeah.
They demonstrated it, and I'd feel much more comfortable sitting on a Dragon capsule on a Falcon rocket than I ever felt on a shuttle.
Yeah, there are a lot of escape systems baked into the Crew Dragon, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I definitely would feel more comfortable on a Dragon than on the shuttle.
And do you think that was sort of a smart path to go back to move away from the space shuttle back to this idea of capsules on rockets?
Well, it would have been wonderful if we could have continued with a winged reusable vehicle, a next generation of it, with a viable escape system. That would have been wonderful. But the reality is that was going to be very expensive, and with a lot of unknowns. Whereas the capsule on top of a rocket has obviously been proven for 50 years.
Yeah.
So we just don't have the money. In my mind, we should have never grounded the shuttle until we had a replacement for it. I've always felt it was, frankly, criminal that the United States had to rely on Russia to launch our astronauts for all these years.
Mike, I wanted to ask what your take on the Artemis initiative is.
Well, I'm all for going back to the moon, and I'm eagerly looking forward to it. I'm 74 years old, so when I tell people in my lifetime, that's getting shorter and shorter. But I would love to see us go back to the moon, and that's liable to happen in my lifetime. Whereas Mars, I think, is a dream. I mean, it's not going to happen. Certainly not going to happen in my lifetime. That we have humans on the moon and bring it back. We'll certainly do some great work, exploration. But yeah, I'm all for that. I hope it goes. We get more money and it goes faster.
Yeah. Got a question from the audience. Arjun is asking, do you think that new astronauts going to the moon and Mars should be military astronauts? Why or why not? And I would love to expand that and just sort of have your thoughts on the idea of Space Force in general.
No, I don't think it's necessary that they be military astronauts. I think the question is we want the most experienced people in high performance vehicles that have a long track record of having dealt with surprises in high performance vehicles, and that would gravitate toward military test pilots. But that's just, you don't need everybody to be a military test pilot. On these multi-crew capsules, you certainly can have other people who have never been in the military or flown a military jet, and that's certainly the right mix, just as it was on the shuttle. I mean, on the shuttle we had military test pilots flying and we had civilians flying.
So how do you think that the skill set changed from your times and from now? So what do astronauts need to have now compared to the times when you were an astronaut? Okay,
it's changed significantly. When I was an astronaut on the shuttle, to a large degree, we were high-flying UPS delivery vehicles. We would take up communication satellites, military satellites, science satellites. We would use the robot arm to release some as like Hubble Space Telescope. We carried cargo, as the name implied, shuttle. We carried shuttle cargo into orbit. And after that was done, there might have been a few experiments in the cabin, and then you'd come back. But now it's obviously on the space station. that is an experimental laboratory. People are doing these various works in all disciplines of science. And so you have to really understand science. You're not just going up there as a mechanical operator as we did in the shuttle era.
So you've got a book.
I do. Two, actually.
Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
let's talk about your latest book.
Well, this is my life story, riding rockets. I wouldn't be surprised some of the people out there might have read it, but that's my life story. A lot of what you've been talking to me about is in this book. I have to make a comment here, though. This book is R-rated in places. It's not a children's book, or certainly you would want to read it before you decided it was age appropriate for a child. There's some adult humor, adult language, and adult situations that make it maybe unfriendly for young children.
Right.
That's my life story. And then I have a book, Do Your Ears Pop in Space? This is an older book. It answers 500 questions I've been asked as an astronaut in a very simple and easy to understand way. It takes complex questions and answers them in an easy to understand way. And this is suitable for anybody, adults, kids, anybody.
Wonderful. Well, Mike, if people want to follow more, obviously they can go and get their hands on your book. But if people want to follow on more, where can they go?
Well, I have a website, which is my name, MikeMullane.com. And you could, I'm sure, see the spelling of everything based on this interview. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn and have a Facebook page. And I don't publish a lot to Facebook, but I have a blog that I have on my website. You can tap into that and read some of my blogs.
Wonderful.
Which are not just about the space business, or in some cases philosophical and in nature about things that I experienced in life, and I think you'd enjoy it.
Fantastic. Well, we will absolutely put a link to it in the show notes so people can dig more. But thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. Just an absolute honor to talk with you and hear your experiences with the shuttle and the space program. And if anyone is listening and they want to learn more and even be hear a bit of a racy story, check out his book.
Okay.
You've been warned. All right.
Thanks, Fraser.
Thanks a lot,
Good
Mike.
luck, everybody. Everybody stay safe out there. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. All right. That was awesome. Let's shift gears now. Nika, you're up next. Why don't you tell us about the Mining Space Summit in Luxembourg?
Exactly. So I hope so. I will go back a little bit to the Luxembourg. So if you guys know, but if somebody doesn't know, it's a very, very small country in the middle of Europe. It's like a dot on the map. And it has its own space agency established in 2018 with a strong focus on space resources and space mining. And they have already a second summit on space mining, where they invite experts from 24 different countries, from different backgrounds, like gas, oil, terrestrial mining, space, government, and they are trying to understand the economical and technical challenges for space mining and make some recommendation how to for future growth of this sector, basically. So Luxembourg is pushing space mining very hard. And somebody might ask, why space mining and why in Luxembourg? Considering
those are two interesting questions. Sure.
Yeah. So the explanation is relatively easy. In 2017, the Luxembourg passed the law to give companies the right for space resources that they extract from asteroids or other celestial bodies. And from the countries that I know of, the US and Luxembourg are the only ones who are doing it legally.
That's right. President Trump just signed a new executive order like a couple of days ago, giving American companies permission to start mining asteroids.
I hadn't heard that.
Excellent.
Yeah. So it was signed just a couple of days ago, and I guess Luxembourg has the same thing. So you have some takeaways from the mining summit?
Exactly. So it wouldn't sound really optimistic, because if you give a summary, they said the mining is hard, the technology is not ready, no customers, no market, no investors. But they have some good, they did some workshops, they have some proposals, like, for example, if the terrestrial mining companies will work with the space sector, they can use technologies of each other. And they did an example of extracting oxygen from the soil, and some terrestrial mining companies explain the technology, and they need just to test it. So if with the close collaboration, we can just kind of to fasten the development of this sector. And another thing is for the early developments, it's the technologies that work both for Earth and space are needed. So there's no other way, because there are no customers. If you want to do something, you need to do something that already can be used. And for example, also, of course, there's no other way that at the beginning, the government has to support the development of this sector, especially with this legal aspect that we just mentioned. Because if you want to have a company and you don't have the rights for whatever you are doing then in space, then it doesn't make sense. There's no economical value in this company. So there's, and like, more, maybe governments has to think how to legally do it properly.
Now, I don't know if you were aware, there's a company called Planetary Resources, which is a space mining company that was out of Seattle, and they actually sold their company to a company in Luxembourg. So they're actually owned by. I've
heard of it.
Yeah. So, and I mean, one of the problems like that has just been like, there's a graveyard filled with companies that have tried to do space mining, and the problem is that there's no way to make money today or even in the foreseeable future. So, did you get a sense that anybody has solved this, or do they have a plan for how they're not all just going to go out of business all the time?
For now, I don't think so. So they just started. Of course, you need the base, you need the ground. How do you build this company and how do you keep it? The same as, for example, even the media, it's not supporting the space mining very well. We hear a lot about SpaceX, about all the rockets and things, but we don't hear a lot of space mining. It's not that popular topic right now. Yeah. But maybe as one of the suggestions was to organize maybe some kind of big contest like Lunar X Prize, Google Lunar X Prize, which maybe attracts publicity and people and like make it more popular. But the only way how it might work that the government starts supporting this initiative, because if you see at the plans of ESA, for example, I don't know NASA exactly, you don't see a lot of projects related to space mining. And this support is needed for the beginning, because they would be the only one who will be the first demand, basically, the governments. I mean,
but it's a really tough thing, right? Because like on the one hand, you've got the government is choosing priorities that can be scientific, they can be exploration. They're not necessarily looking to just make money. And then on the other hand, you've got these companies like Planetary Resources. There's also Deep Space Industries, and I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other smaller startups. I've talked to many in the past. I'm sure, Dave, you've talked to many as well, they're struggling because they're trying to do it outside of the government. They're trying to do it as part of the private industry, and there's no traction. So I think that there's got to be that balance between.
I think it's still cheaper to let the asteroids come to us right now.
Just smash into the Earth, yeah.
Well, when you look at like the Hayabusa, what samples have been returned? I mean, it was micrograms that in OSIRIS-REx, what it's bringing back, it's like a few grams. It's like the size of a battery or something like that. It's not much.
Yeah.
So, tons of that material hit the Earth every day.
Yeah,
so
And so to
It's a
try
ways
to,
off before we can bring stuff back in bulk, I think.
yeah, exactly. To try to actually harvest this in any large amount is just going to be so difficult. It's so far out, and the only organizations that can actually do this over the long term are governments. Governments who can just keep going year after year after year as the expenses mount up.
We need the space elevator to get out of our gravity well. Then that cuts the cost of having that big booster rocket just to get out there.
Well,
that
that's a
cuts it
whole.
in
I mean,
half.
that's a whole
So
other argument.
yeah.
The
But even the so yeah, mining, okay, we have a technology, but the question is, where do you go? So let's say moon now with the Artemis program, okay, it might be interesting, but even now we have only 2D maps. We don't, even if we see water, we don't know, okay, how much water is on this? Is it like 1 millimeter of this water, or like, is it going like 3 meters, kilometers? So nobody knows. So here on the ground on Earth, some governmental bodies do this prospecting, and then we know where to dig, you know, and the oil companies maybe buy some licenses for these maps or whatever. But we don't have something like that in space. So I don't know who would be doing it. NASA, ESA will be doing this all maps investigation, providing it for free. And then the companies could start like choosing the landing position and so on. So there's still this, even the beginning is not clear. Where would you go?
So did you, I mean, I guess in the age of coronavirus, did they do this whole conference online?
It was before, the conference was before, it was in 2019, like at end of 2019, but they just results they published last week or something.
Okay. And so were there any other interesting takeaways that people should be aware of?
Actually not. I was just like, I was hoping that there would be something that would say, yes, we can do space mining now, but no, I've read the whole paper and I couldn't see anything that would show.
No, it's still just you dig a hole in the ground and you pour money into it. That's the plan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So currently, that's the plan, unfortunately for now.
David, what do you got?
Yes. Well, the BepiColombo, speaking of European space agencies, actually it's a joint JAXA, Japanese Space Agency, European Space Agency, Mercury mission. BepiColombo is doing its Earth gravitational assist on Friday morning. It's going to actually be flying by about 7,000 miles, I believe, above the Earth's surface, about 1/3 to the geostationary satellite orbit. This is a planned, it's only gravitational assist pass by the Earth. It may be visible, actually, too. We were looking at the geometry and the circumstances of the flyby. Heavens Above, Chris Pete's Heavens Above has a really good tracking page on their front page that will do predictions for your site. South America looks like it has the best view, I think it's like 1 or 2 in the morning our time here, Eastern time. But I noticed we actually would see it far to the south. It's going to actually pass through the Earth's shadow. So when it passes through the Earth's shadow afterwards, it's going to be about an 8th magnitude star, meaning you're not going to see it with the naked eye, but you're going to be able to maybe, if you use some of Chris Pete's star maps, aim at a particular area. What I would do is find a star it's going to pass by, aim at that time and watch at that time, and you may see it move by. So I think some amateurs will probably
do we know what magnitude or?
8th magnitude.
8th, okay, max. Okay, yeah.
So in that not quite naked eye range.
And so for people who aren't familiar with BepiColombo, what's
BepiColombo is, again, it's a joint. It actually is 2 spacecraft built together that are hooked onto one bus, and it's Japanese Space Agency and European Space Agency, and it's going to be the second one to orbit Mercury. It's not going to get there until 2025. NASA's Messenger was the first one to orbit Mercury. And NASA also it was Mariner 10, I think, did some flybys earlier on. So we haven't really explored Mercury. Messenger actually mapped most of the planet. We didn't even have the whole planet mapped out because when the flybys were done with Mariner, they just kind of saw us, kind of like we did with Pluto with New Horizons. It saw the section that was turned forward in high resolution. So there's still part of it that we hadn't mapped. BepiColombo is going to do 2 more gravitational assists past Venus, and it's going to do 6 past Mercury before it finally gets there. It's going to take forever. December 2025 is when the spacecraft is going to get there, and the two sections are going to separate, and they're going to do their own orbits, but it's going to be a long drawn out. And they're doing this flyby right now. I mean, gravity is going to do its thing no matter what, but the European Space Agency, they're at minimal staffing.
Yes.
They're doing physical distancing in the control room. Some people are working at home remotely on this, but they're doing this really with the skeleton crew.
Yeah.
They've been affected too. The Mars rover, Rosalind Franklin, got bumped back
Yes.
to 2022 due to the ongoing pandemic, which we kind of thought was going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, it was already in trouble. I mean, they were having a lot of problems with their parachute, and so it's not really surprising that they decided in the end to push the launch back. I mean, I'll bet you they would have pushed the launch back even if there wasn't a coronavirus, but that sure didn't help. I'm actually, it's interesting. I've been tracking a lot of what the various space agencies have been doing during the pandemic, and it's quite interesting. Like the European Space Agency has distributed operations to everybody's homes, and they are, for the most part, continuing to run their spacecraft. NASA as well, they both went into a safe mode.
Yes.
And they put a ton of their spacecraft into safe mode until they could get everybody home and get everybody set up and get all their gear set up and make sure that they were able to connect. And then they were able to bring these spacecraft back online and continue operations for many of them at various levels. So it's so weird to think that people are running these spacecraft from their homes.
Well, it's been talked about with a lot of things that everyone's like, well, before everybody's like, well, we can't possibly do these things remotely. But it turns out when push comes to shove, most things you can do remotely, actually.
Yeah.
Finding out.
Yeah.
So a lot of the NASA ones, I'm researching that for an article coming up too, about how this is all affecting the astronomy community and in the space community. And NASA's, most of their facilities are at level 3 or 4, which is either highly encouraged to work at home or mandatory work at home. So depending on whether there's been coronavirus cases at their facilities. But it's as far as I know, the NASA's Mars rover is still a go. There's been some rumors going around about what's the fate of it. I know the James Webb program has shut down, but they've got some of the key tests on the Mirror. And of course, James Webb has been a moving target anyway for a decade now that it's supposed to go. The United Arab Emirates Mars Hope mission, that is going. I actually looked at their site. According to their website, they're saying that mission is still a go. The Chinese Mars mission is the other one I have heard. They're kind of hard to penetrate anyway, as far as what they're going and doing. So
I'm not sure what the state. They were expected to launch their mission this summer as well during the window. And I haven't heard anything about whether or not it's going to happen. So there's a story that I wanted to talk with you and sort of have this be a bit of a conversation. David, have you been following the updates on the Starlink DarkSat?
A little bit. I saw a little bit of some of the research. I wrote about it earlier as far as when they were in their initial orbits. Yeah.
So now some astronomers have actually been able to track the brightness. Now that batch of Starlink satellites have reached their final orbit, they have had a chance to track the brightness. And originally when they did it, the expectation was that you would get so SpaceX, obviously astronomers freaked out when these satellites were launched. I think now, as we see the necessity of a global internet system, I think people are maybe a little more open to the idea, but they were concerned about the brightness of these satellites, and so SpaceX painted one of these satellites darker in some way. They used darkening techniques. We're not entirely sure what that means yet, to see if they could mitigate some of the brightness as they pass through the field of view for telescopes. And the expectation was that the calculation was they figured they could darken them by about 0.88 magnitude, or about 55% fainter than the regular Starlinks.
It's not really a lot.
Well, I mean, it would decrease it pretty, fairly significantly. So it turns out the measure. So now astronomers have had a chance to measure. The regular Starlinks come in at 6.7 magnitude.
And they're in the deployed orbit.
And the DarkSat is 7.6.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean,
that's still something that's going to show up on long exposure. It's not naked eye.
right. So 6.7 is not naked eye already. So in other words,
Yeah.
I think the big worry that everybody was having was that you would look out and you would just see you would see a grid, as we were penned in
Moving
by
stars.
all of these satellites. And now it really looks like that's not the case, that they are going to be fairly faint.
When they're initially deployed, they're first, second magnitude. They were surprisingly
Oh yeah,
bright
they're very bright when they
saw
first go
them,
off. Yeah.
in their first deployment orbit. Incidentally, the other company doing this, OneWeb, they folded.
Yes.
They went bankrupt. So they've already got 2 launches.
Yeah.
So there's if anybody wants to use the constellation of communication satellites, it's up there now.
Yeah,
But
that just is exactly. Go ahead, Nika.
No, I was just generally like about this dark Starlink. Did they just painted it black and didn't do any other changes? Like, I mean, it will influence the thermal thing. It's basically, it could be a new thing.
Yeah, they have been pretty cagey about what they actually did. So they never really said precisely what they did. They just said that they used techniques to darken it.
I dug around when I wrote about it a few months ago, and I could not find a picture of the dark sat on the ground. It's like I even put some feelers up to some inside contacts I have.
Yep.
There's got to be some images of it somewhere, but they're not sharing them, what it actually looks like.
Yeah.
I wonder, the government, the DoD knows there's one classified satellite called Lacrosse 5 that kind of pulls its own vanishing act, and it has some. I wonder if they have some kind of access to that, kind of just me speculating.
Yeah. And so, I mean, for many observatories, there's going to be no problem, but for some observatories that are doing long exposures, the best example is the Vera Rubin Observatory. There's going to be a satellite pass in almost every image that they take. And even 7.6 magnitude is plenty bright to be caught by that telescope in every image that they do. So,
so what would they do?
Pardon me?
So what would they do? Will they just?
Well, so this isn't the end of the story. So SpaceX has committed to continue to work with astronomers to fix the brightness issue. And so they're going to try a bunch of other ideas. One idea is that they're going to give the Starlink satellites like a little shade that darkens the part that is highly reflective, so that
would actually make more sense.
No, it's a very good idea. And so you would end up with a situation where the sunlight is hitting, say, it's bright solar panels, but then the reflected light off that solar panel is hitting the shade, and so it's not visible down on Earth. And so that might cut off some of it. There's also some ideas in positioning the way the satellites are positioned to the sun, and when and how they do it as they pass on their orbits, matched with the darkening techniques. And so each one of these ideas is probably going to knock some amount of the magnitude off, and eventually it's going to get to some place where I think astronomers are going to be, they're not going to be happy, right? They would love them to be crystal clear.
You know what my lingering concern is that kind of keeps me up at night is that, for years, every once in a while we read an article about advertising in space, or somebody wants to try to put advertising up, and none of these things ever really, like Humanity Star, these like none of these really pan out. And I wonder if the whole Starlink constellation is going to show companies how to actually do that by accident. Where they're like, this is how you can actually put up a bunch of satellites to like make a logo or spell something.
Don't even say those words.
Yeah, but it's there are ideas out there to do those sorts of things.
Yeah. Nancy's asking if Starlink cannot be made completely invisible, what is the ideal magnitude that would be acceptable? What do you think would be a magnitude that astronomers could live with?
Oh no, I mean, it's like when you're talking like professional astronomy, there's a lot of programs out there that can just subtract these things out. Amateurs have processing programs. They subtract out trails anyway.
Yeah, I mean
because
we do this all the time.
The LSST going online, that's going to go down past 20th magnitude. Like, but it's going to go really deep.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's possible.
it's definitely important to know that astronomers, this is an old problem. Pulling satellite trails and airplane trails and cloud noise and all kinds of things out of your images is very common. But it's like, imagine that you have some number of hours of observing time that's available to you, and you know, and you're taking image after image, and some chunk of those images are going to be, parts of them are going to be obliterated by the bright. You're just going to have, you know, where before you could have had data, you're going to have this bright white streak that's going to pass through the whole field of view, or right through the object that you were attempting to observe. Yeah, that's a great image. Yeah, so in
star trails through the Rosette Nebula.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah.
Yeah, so to hold actually hold it up again, I'll just sort of show people. So this is an image of the Rosette Nebula, which everybody knows is my favorite nebula. And you can see all these white lines that are through it. And the problem is the Rosette Nebula is located pretty much at geostationary. The geostationary satellites fly directly through this nebula. And so Dylan O'Donnell produced this image, and normally he would remove all those star trails, but he kept them because he thought it was pretty hilarious, and we use that as an image for the book. And you can see all of those lines. And so astronomers remove this all the time. They are very comfortable in doing that. It's just every one that you have to remove is a little more data. So it's going to be this, it's not going to be all or nothing. It's going to be this sliding scale where if we had 100% of the data before there were any any satellites, and we get to 0 where we're covered in a Dyson sphere, it's going to be this sliding scale where people try to get as much data as they can for as long as they can, you know. But obviously, Earth-based astronomy's days are numbered, but it's not going to be a binary event. It's going to take a while.
What about the OneWeb you said? Because I didn't, I just know, I've heard that it go bankrupt, but what do they do with the satellites? Did you read something?
Well, they're probably going to auction it off.
Yeah.
I mean, that happened to the Iridium satellites too. The original Motorola, they went bankrupt after they put the first Iridiums up, and then Microsoft bought that. Somebody will probably buy the Constellation. Yeah, because they're partially up there. There's another OneWeb launch slated, so I don't know if it's going to happen now. But
yeah. So,
and I'm pretty sure that was Corona, that was pandemic related, that their company folded too.
It was the same situation back in the .com bust. All of these companies laid mountains of fiber optic cables, and then Google just bought it all because all the companies went out of business. Google had a ton of money, and they just snapped up all of this cable for additional capability.
Well, the Iridiums in the 90s, when they launched them, the idea was that was the way mobile communication was going to go. Yeah. And it didn't quite pan out that way, but the satellites were already up there. So mobile phones, satellite phones only became a niche application. Like if you were in the Himalayas, you would use, or Antarctica, you would use a satellite phone, but it never became in prevalent use.
So we've got a few more minutes, David. I want to talk about some bizarre orbits for exoplanets around binary stars.
Yeah, this was an interesting study, came out of the National Radio Observatory using, it was looking at ALMA data down the radio telescopes down in Chile and some of the Kepler data. And they found an interesting relationship looking at what they call circumbinary disks, like when they're looking at debris disks in what known exoplanets had already been discovered versus the orbits of the double stars that they're orbiting. They found that all the Kepler data, of course, Kepler is biased toward very exoplanets in fast orbits and things that are like, because they're transiting. So they found that double stars in the Kepler data that were under 40 days in the double star orbit tend to be aligned. The orbit of the debris disk in the exoplanet was also, like you see here in our solar system, where everything is nice and orderly along the ecliptic, you know, where everything is lined up. However, when you get into those exoplanets that have orbits or debris disks that have orbits around stars where the doubles are orbiting longer than 40 days, things get kind of weird, where actually that debris disk is kicked out of misalignment. And it seems like 40 days from the data, we have enough of a data set where we're looking at that we can actually kind of start classifying double star exoplanets. So, and some of these debris disks are pretty radical. There was one in there in the catalog that was circumpolar, actually, where the double stars are orbiting this way in the debris disk. I think we all wrote about that
Yep.
when it was found 2012 or so. I forget. It's one of the
Yeah, no, I think it was
HDs.
fairly recent, actually. It was just a couple of years ago, but I know the story.
And there, I talked to one of the researchers. They're looking at some of the test data because TESS is up there now too. So I just think it's cool because we have enough exoplanet discoveries out there that we're starting to be able to classify these different kind of bizarre solar systems that really are radically different than our own.
Yeah.
It's starting to put things in categories. There's like over 4,000 exoplanets discovered to date. So
yeah, it's funny. Like, people would always ask, like, could you get like a star and then have the planets going one way, but other planets going this way? And you'd just be like, no, come on.
I think they'd get kicked out.
Yeah.
But still,
Yeah,
I think if the doubles are
maybe
close
so.
enough in,
Yeah.
we're finding, and they've been found. There was a few. I asked him about multiples, like triples or quadruples, and he said, yes, there are a few instances of exoplanets in those sorts of systems. Now, you're old enough like me that I remember before they had discovered exoplanets, because the first ones were in the 90s.
95.
I remember in astronomy, you would hear astronomers in the 80s saying, well, we'll probably never discover exoplanets because it's just too tough to do. Like at that time, we thought, well, we'll never know for sure if there's other planets out there because they're too far and remote to see. So I think
and here we are, and we're already sick of exoplanets. Like, if I have to write about another exoplanet, ugh.
The counts go up every day. So yeah.
And we're like, let's do mining of these exoplanets already.
Yeah. All right.
Well, now we can get spectra. That's what's
I mean, now, come back to me when we've got a habitable exoplanet orbiting a sun-like star. Now I'm interested.
If we ever find life like elsewhere, I'm going to pin it on. It's going to be like, say, the spectra of something like chlorophyll in exoplanet, something that chlorophyll doesn't exist naturally, and we would know. Okay, but it's going to be so tantalizing because we're going to be like, that's just a little blip on a graph. It's like, we want to see what the alien jungle looks like.
Yeah, totally. All right, well, we've reached the end of our show. Before I let you go, Dave, tell us what you're working on and where people can find out more.
Dave Dickinson, frequent contributor to Universe Today, Sky and Telescope. That's pretty much, I've been writing there. This first book, Universe Today's Ultimate Guide to the Cosmos. And where's the new one? Whoa. This is what a book looks like. This is what a book looks like before it's actually published. This is my photocopied last edit. So
that's amazing.
Is going to be a deep sky field guide.
Did we settle on the cover?
We did.
Okay,
we
good.
did actually. So yeah, and everything is in the can as far as I know. I mean, I haven't really. I assume Page Street still exists. I heard from them a couple weeks ago.
Right.
It's getting printed in China, so that kind of makes me a little nervous.
Oh no, they're fine now. Are you kidding? They're set. China's opened up. Wuhan is
the world distribution being shut down.
Yeah,
right now.
No, it's things leaving China is going to be a little tricky, but no, they're now the best set up in the world with a complete and total lockdown of their borders and a pretty rigorous testing system inside the country. So no, I look forward.
I should write another book during the lockdown, because I was telling the wife, I was kind of like, if this was 6 months ago, I wouldn't even know there was a pandemic, because you live a monastic life when you write a book anyway. So
you've been known to travel too, though. So while you write, so there's that experience as well. But no, it's for me. I have been so busy. When you think like, oh yeah, okay. Now I've got all this time in the world and I'm going to get all this stuff done, and you don't. And it turns out it wasn't because you didn't have time. It's because you are busy. And
this has really changed. This has changed my life pretty minimally as far as like my work, because I still work the same way I work. It just means that I can't walk to the brewery or something afterwards because they're closed.
Yeah, that's the only difference is I don't go out for coffee with friends the way I used to. But apart from that, it's very similar to my existing experience. Turns out we were preparing for this for decades. Mika, what are you working on, and where can people find out more?
It's very sad to tell, but Corona, things is going on, pandemic and so on. So we cannot organize our events.
Yes.
So I am literally not doing anything in live, and I was thinking to move it to the virtual world, but then it would be another Weekly Space Hangout. So I'm like currently.
You should. It's fine. You should totally do it, or and even do it in German. That'd be amazing. If you need any help, let me know.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if people want to find out more, where can they follow you?
Twitter, Veronica Space, but now currently no news. So
there's still news.
Still. Yeah.
But I could put everyone back here. I totally get. I think for the last month, I definitely haven't been putting out as many videos of my own stuff on my own channel, and it's sort of hard to feel like anything matters in this time, because there's such a catastrophe that's going on around the whole planet, and yet there's nothing else we can do.
Exactly.
Stay home, don't spread the virus, and just keep your spirits high.
I think everybody's thinking everything will go back to normal soon, but I don't think it's going to be. There's no normal.
No,
not the way there was.
No, it feels to me like we're still 18 months away from a vaccine starting to roll out to the most sensitive communities, and then we'll all wait in line after that. And that even then, the economic impacts of this are going to be shuddering through this system for years. 3 months, 3 years, 5 years. We're still going to be experiencing this in some level. So I had my month to curl up into a ball and sob and rock back and forth, and now it's time to get back to work. So
with change always comes opportunity too. So
yeah, that which this is one of those times that makes us stronger, we hope. So Nika, you absolutely need to get going, get on with that, organizing people.
I have some other ideas.
Okay.
So once I'm done,
Right.
I will let
Let
you
me
know
know
on the
if I can help.
next. It's just in the work in progress. Don't wanna.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, before we go, I want to give a big thank you, of course, to all of the people watching, all of our moderators, everybody on both Twitch and on YouTube. Special thanks to my co-hosts and our amazing guest this week, Mike Mullane. What a privilege to be able to get a chance to talk with him. And as I mentioned, I've got an interview tomorrow morning, which you're going to want to watch on my YouTube channel, and then another on Monday afternoon. So stick around for both of those. I've got both those events on my YouTube channel, so come and join us. Apart from that, we'll see you all next week.
Bye-bye.